She's not what you'd expect. She's tough and feisty, but gentle and tender. She makes millions and gives millions to the poor. She cries, she laughs, she teaches, she comforts. This is the Dani Johnson Show.
I want to read you something that I came upon years ago. As we enter into this evening, I have some very pointed questions for you to think about and to challenge you with as you develop this part of your life and as you develop a vision for this part of your leadership. Because every single one of us in this room have a leadership role over people who are younger than us. We have a leadership role whether we are the parent or the teacher or the social worker, the aunt, the older sibling, or even the younger sibling, to be honest with you. It doesn't matter what somebody's age is. Everyone here has influence and has influence over the next generation. No matter if we are the next generation or we are above it, we have influence in that generation. So please listen to this. A few years after I was born, my dad met a stranger who was new to our small town. From the beginning, Dad was fascinated with this enchanting newcomer and soon invited him to live with our family. The stranger was quickly accepted and was around from then on. As I grew up, I never questioned his place in my family. In my young mind, he had a special niche. My parents were complementary instructors. Mom taught me good from evil, and Dad taught me to obey. But the stranger, he is and was our storyteller. He would keep us spellbound for hours on end with adventures, mysteries, and comedies. If I wanted to know anything about politics, history, or science, he always knew the answers about the past, understood the present, and even seemed able to predict the future. He took my family to the first Major League Baseball game. He made me laugh, and he made me cry. The stranger never stopped talking, but Dad didn't seem to mind. Sometimes Mom would get up quietly while the rest of us were shushing each other to listen to what he had to say. And she would go into the kitchen for peace and quiet. I wonder now if she ever prayed for the stranger to leave. Dad ruled our household with certain moral convictions, but the stranger never felt obligated to honor them. Profanity, for example, was not allowed in our home, not from us, our friends, or any visitors. Our longtime visitor, however, got away with four-letter words that burned my ears and made my dad squirm and my mother blush. My dad didn't permit the liberal use of alcohol, but the stranger encouraged us to try it on a regular basis. He made cigarettes look cool, cigars manly, and pipes distinguished. He talked freely, much too freely, about sex. His comments were sometimes blatant, sometimes suggestive, and generally embarrassing. I now know that my early concepts about relationships were influenced strongly by the stranger. Time after time, he opposed the values of my parents, yet was seldom rebuked and never asked to leave. More than 50 years have passed since the stranger moved in with our family. He has blended right in and is not nearly as fascinating as he was at first. Still, if you could walk into my parents' den today, you would still find him sitting over in the corner waiting for someone to listen to him talk and watch him draw his pictures. His name? We just call him TV. He has a wife now. Her name is Computer. Their first child is cell phone. The second child is iPod, iPad, tablet. Me misbehave? Seriously? Tarzan ran around practically naked. Cinderella snuck out and arrived home after midnight. Pinocchio told lies. Aladdin was a thief. Batman drove over 200 miles per hour. Snow White lived in a house with 7 men. Ariel disobeyed her father and sold her soul for a man. Popeye smoked a pipe and had tattoos. Pac-Man ran around to digital music while eating pills that enhanced his performance. Robin Hood was a thief. Shaggy and Scooby were mysteriously solving hippies that always had the munchies. Jasmine was in a forbidden relationship with a homeless thief, Aladdin. Little Red Riding Hood didn't listen to her mother and left. Sleeping Beauty was kissed by a stranger and then married him. These are the stories that parents have raised their kids with. And yet, parents complain about kids and comment on how the younger generation is messed up. What's wrong with this picture? Programming. The inception. Marketing. Expose, involve, and upgrade, which is a marketing strategy that has been used for years, decades. I've used the marketing strategy, expose, involve, and upgrade. And I've learned it from great marketers, and it works really, really well. And all of our children have been exposed to messaging that is in the opposite direction of where you have a desire for your children to go. Who is in your home? The future is in your home. Those little ones that are running me around, or maybe like one of my little ones that are painting his crib with poop 23 times in a row. Those little ones that at 2 are telling you no, pulling their sister's hair, tripping their little brother as he's running down the hall. Those little ones are the future of our nation. They're the future business owners, future politicians, future authors, future scientists, future innovators. There could be the next Edison in your home. There could be the next famous Tim Tebow in your home. There could be the next Sean Harper in your home. There could be the next Bill Gates in your home. The next president of the United States could be in your home. The next astronaut that's going to walk on the moon or Mars or get close to the sun could be in your home. The future leaders of your nation are in your home. And yet we put them in front of a phone and an iPad to be programmed by marketers to go in the opposite direction of what they're called to. The future, business people, school teachers, the future mothers and fathers are in your home. Some have already grown up, and they're now starting to make a family of their own. And they're taking what was passed down to them, and they're going to pass it to the next generation. Unfortunately, we've become a society that really hasn't been very diligent with what we've trained the next generation with. And some of us come from a background that we didn't even know we're supposed to. The title of tonight's message is Grooming the Next Generation for Success. It's a message that I wrote a long time ago. And it happened and was birthed while I was raising my kids, who are now all grown, all adults, have their own lives. They make their own decisions. They cook their own food. They wash their own clothes. They know how to take care of themselves. But while they were all in our home, I had learned a lot of things in business that I applied in the home. And how I saw them was really largely based on how I had worked with thousands and tens of thousands of people in business. And even though I didn't have a great childhood, I had such a desire to not pass down the same curses that were handed to me, that were fed to me. I didn't want to pass down the same curses that were spoken over me. I didn't want to pass down the curse of poverty to the next generation that came from my body. I didn't want to pass down the curse of toxic relationships. I didn't want to pass down the curse of divorce. I didn't want to pass down the curse of bad health. I didn't want to pass down the curse of abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse. I didn't want the same curses that were handed to me to be handed to my kids. And I also didn't want the same spiritual curses that were passed down to me to be passed down to them. I didn't want the same curse of rejection and abandonment. I didn't want the same curse of fear being passed down to my next generation. But I knew intuitively that that's exactly what I had to offer them. If I did not change how I saw being a parent, and if I didn't see how I saw myself, if I didn't change how I saw me, because as a man thinks, so is he. And how I see myself is how I'm going to see my kids. And the limits I put on myself would be the limits I pass down to my kids. And I was given a crazy amount of limitations handed to me like on a silver platter. But really, it was a platter that was spray painted to look like it's silver, but underneath it was just nothing but styrofoam. I did not want to pass down the same fighting, the screaming. I didn't want to pass down the lack of vision. The vision of working a 9-to-5 job and renting some video or watching some television. I didn't want to pass down the television being on 24/7 because the stranger that I was reading about was in the house that I grew up in 24/7. The TV was never off. I didn't want to pass down the same set of mediocre curses that were given to me. So I knew something had to change in me in order for me to do the right thing. And that was not to give birth and hope for the best, and to not do the Christian thing, which was to give birth and pray for the best. But it was to do exactly what the Bible, the word of the living God says to do, and that is to train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I wanted to do exactly what the word of the living God said, which was that if any one of you deceive any one of these little ones, it's better for you to tie a millstone around your neck and throw yourself into the deep. I didn't want to do what was passed down to me, which was hatred towards God. But I also did not want to be what I had experienced when I was in high school. That when I had encountered Christians and Christian kids, that I encountered hypocritical lifestyles, where the kids knew how to quote scripture, and they knew how to show up at youth group not showing any cleavage. But they also knew how to have a whole separate line of clothes that they wore after youth group. They also had this different life where they'd be like pretending like they were virgins, but afterwards they were getting it on like everybody gets it on. Not to mention the drugs that were being used. But boy, we sure knew how to show up at school, and we surely knew how to give the scriptures, and we knew how to act right at youth group, and we knew how not to cuss when we were around our parents. What I also learned is that when somebody made a mistake and their sin showed up on the outside of their body, I learned that Christians judge. And I learned that you get kicked when you're down. And I did not want to pass down the curse of judgment that I received from the church. I didn't want to pass down conditional love that I received from the church. I didn't want to pass down the curse of a small little God that lived in a small little building called church. But I wanted to pass down the understanding that he's much bigger than anything any of us could ever fathom or understand. But that all things were possible for those who believed, and to ask big, and to trust big. I did not want to pass down a fickle God to my children, but I wanted to pass down the living God, the breathing God, the God that sent his son to die on a cross because all of us have fallen short of the glory of him. I wanted to give my kids a better shot at life than I was given. And it wasn't about, I want to give them everything I didn't get, because that was going to do nothing besides further another generation of entitled people who expect miracles to fall out of the sky, expect to get lucky. I didn't want to pass down the lottery God to my kids that I first learned about at the first church I ever attended through a school when I was 13 years old. Or the poverty God that I had also learned about as I was attending church. The poverty God that says, oh, it's not good to make money. That in order to be humble, in order to be meek, you have to be impoverished, which is a total lie. You're not going to find that scripture in the Bible. It doesn't exist. And then the lottery God, which is the whole Pentecostal, many movements that are out there even to this day, which is the whole prosperity gospel. This is if you just believe, then it's going to follow the sky. If you just tithe, then it's just going to follow the sky. Just name it, just claim it, and it's yours. I didn't want to pass down those two false gods to my kids. So this required for me as a mom to dig deeper than my mom dug, deeper than my mom knew how to dig. This required me to do my own study. This required me to make my own commitments. This required me to say, who are you, God? And what do you really have for our kids? This also required me to seek out healing and counseling, because what was poured into me was a big, nasty mess. And all I had available to give my kids was a big, nasty, gnarly mess. So I chose to believe, friend, I chose to believe that God, is it possible for you to deliver me from the mess in which I was groomed for? And I was clearly groomed to fail in finances. I was groomed to fail with work life. I was groomed to fail in marriage. I was groomed to fail in relationships. I was groomed to fail in health. I was groomed to fail in every way possible. Is it possible for one who's been groomed to fail? Is it possible for that one to succeed, but more importantly, to help the next generation to succeed? Not just for me, but for my great, great, great grandkids. Is it possible? So friends, tonight, as well as all of today, I don't know if you picked up on it or not. It depends on what your walk of faith is, or even if you have one. But the only reason why I'm alive, and the only reason why I've had anything good happen in my life, the only reason why I am not 6 feet under or completely cremated at this point, is because there is a living God who saved me from my wretchedness, who gave me a chance to change my life. And apart from him, I can do nothing. Apart from him, I'm a total financial failure. Apart from him, I am a parent failure. Apart from him, I am a marriage failure. Apart from him, I have major health failures. Apart from him, I am a business failure. Apart from him, my future is already failed. And it's only because he chose to rescue a kid who is hopeless and suicidal, and to reveal himself through the story of his son.